Julio Jones became the fastest player in NFL history to reach 10,000 receiving yards, doing it in just 104 games. From 2014 to 2019, Julio averaged 103.8.
Between 2014 and 2019, the guy averaged over 103 yards every single game. He posted 5 seasons with at least 1,400 yards, basically owning the entire decade.
Major receiving records in Falcons history. At 6'3", 220 pounds, with 4.39 speed, Julio was a physics problem defenses couldn't solve. Too big for corners, too fast.
Cornerbacks were too small. Safeties were too slow. Double teams, a waste of time. All-pro Patrick Peterson even called him a straight-up mutant.
Created him in a lab somewhere with Dr. Doomsville or something. And yet, for all his dominance, he never won a Super Bowl ring. So how good was Julio Jones?
Let's take it back to Foley, Alabama. Quiet town, but Friday nights were strictly for football. And right in the middle of it was a kid named Quinor Lopez Jones.
Quintoris Lopez Jones, but everybody would come to know him as Julio. By the time he got to high school, he was 6'3", built like a grown man, and could move like...
He absolutely wrecked the Alabama track scene, grabbing state gold medals in the long jump, triple jump, and high jump.
100 meters in 11.1 seconds, soar 24 feet through the air, and still make time to dominate on the basketball court. He was named Mr. Alabama Track.
They named him Mr. Alabama Track and Field after he bagged 6 state titles. And guess what? That explosive speed was terrifying on a football field.
In his junior season alone, he put up 75 catches for 1,306 yards and 16 touchdowns. People started calling him Waffle House.
You know why? Because he was always open. I love that. Rivals.com ranked him the #1 receiver in the entire country.
A 5-star recruit who could change an entire program. And on National Signing Day, live on ESPNU, the kid from Foley made a decision that made the entire...
I'll be going to the University of Alabama. Nick Saban had just taken over a year prior and was coming off a rough 7-6 season.
7 wins and 6 losses. He needed a player who could change everything. Enter Julio Jones. In his first college game, under the lights of the...
A few weeks later, he lit up #3 Georgia for another score. By halftime, Bama was crushing them 31-0.
Alabama. He was unstoppable. He just kept delivering. Over 100 yards against Tennessee. A clutch overtime grab at LSU. Big plays against Florida in the SEC title game.
Julio swept the team stats and became the first true freshman in Alabama history to win SEC Freshman of the Year.
Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Irvin. Then came 2009, the so-called sophomore slump. Defenses schemed their entire plan around Julio, rolling.
They double-teamed him every single snap. So yeah, his stats took a dip, but his impact, massive.
Now to win the Heisman and bring Alabama a national title. In 2010, Julio put it all together. Career highs across the board, 78 catches, 1,133 yards, and...
He dropped 221 yards on Tennessee with a broken hand. Then, in the Iron Bowl against Cam Newton, he snagged 10 balls for nearly 200 yards. He wrapped it up by
He capped off his career with a blowout bowl win over Michigan State, adding a rushing touchdown for good measure. By the time
when he left Tuscaloosa, he was second all-time in catches and yards. The guy was a legend before he even played a down in the NFL. By the time
so it's no surprise that by the time the 2011 NFL draft rolled around, Julio Jones wasn't just a top prospect, he was more like a myth.
6'3", 220, and he runs a 4.39 40 on a broken foot. Scouts lost their minds. Add a 38.5-inch vertical, and it was game over. Down in Atlanta,
still looked unstoppable. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, GM Thomas Dimitroff believed Julio Jones was the missing piece for a team led by Matt.
The catch? They were picking 27th. So Dimitroff went all in, traded 5 picks, including 2 first-rounders, just to jump to #6.
Just to move up to #6. Atlanta had just mortgaged its future for one player. Now the city could only wait to see was Julio Jones actually...
His debut against the Bears? 5 catches, 71 yards, not bad for a start.
100-yard game
later,
with 6 catches for 115 yards, and followed it with an 11-catch, 127-yard performance in Seattle. Then came Week 9 against the Colts. The game...
Matt Ryan launches a deep ball, and Julio takes it 80 yards to the house after he'd already scored a 50-yarder earlier.
2 touchdowns, 131 yards. But his rookie year wasn't without struggle. Hamstring injury slowed him down, forcing him to miss.
Rookie life isn't easy, though. A nagging hamstring cost him 3 games. But when he healed up late in the season, he went nuclear.
Ever see from a rookie receiver. Over his final 4 games, he posted 393 yards and 6 touchdowns. By the time the Falcons reached the playoffs at 10.
He was the scariest weapon on the field. In his playoff debut against the Giants, he hauled in 7 catches.
Champion Giants, he hauled in 7 catches for 64 yards. He finished his rookie year with 54 catches, 959 yards, and 8 touchdowns, leading all rookies.
But that was just the warm-up. Opener of the 2012 season against KC, 6 catches, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns.
With 6 receptions, 108 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Atlanta's offense was a machine. Matt Ryan was slinging it. Roddy White was still a threat.
But Julio, he was the engine. By mid-season, defensive coordinators were having nightmares. He lit up the Eagles
against Philadelphia. Julio torched the Eagles for 123 yards and a touchdown. Then followed that up a week later by carving up.
One play, he burns you with raw speed. The next, he's boxing you out like an NBA power forward. Just unfair.
Falcons rolled through the regular season, finishing 13-3 and locking up the NFC's top seed. Julio finished with 79 catches, 1,198 yards.
Julio's stat line: 79 catches, nearly 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. First Pro Bowl nod, easy.
Since 1998. In the NFC Championship against the 49ers, Julio put on a first-half clinic that felt like the birth of a superstar.
11 catches, 182 yards, 2 trips to the end zone. Atlanta sprinted to a 17-point lead, riding the coattails of Jones's absolute dominance. But then, just as fast as they soared, the wheels completely fell off.
The Niners, the magic unraveled. But San Francisco clawed back and stole the game. But at just 23 years old, it was clear Julio was going to be a problem.
Fast forward to Week 5 of the 2013 season. Jones was sitting on the throne as the league leader with 580 receiving yards. Dude was tracking for nearly 1,900.
At that rate, he could have been on track for one of the best statistical seasons in NFL history.
Then
in one moment, it all
ground
stopped.
to a halt.
It was
Monday Night Football under the lights against the Jets. He had already snagged 8 balls for almost a hundo. Late in the 4th, he went airborne for a standard jump ball.
When he came down,
and
the crowd didn't notice anything at first. Julio did. He had fractured his foot, the same foot he'd broken back at Alabama.
For the Falcons, it was a total system failure. They went from 13-3 dominators the prior year to 4-12 bottom feeders.
Questions started to creep in. He'd now had 2 major foot surgeries, one in college, one in the pros. For a player whose entire game was built on
when your paycheck depends on explosive cuts and precision, folks rightfully worried was he washed. But if you knew the man, you knew the show was far from over.
Season might have ended early, but it set the stage for one of the most impressive comebacks a receiver has ever had. Because when
2014 kicked off, he didn't just look healthy, he looked supersonic. Dropped 116 yards on the Saints right out of the gate.
By week 3, he exploded for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 56-14 demolition of the Bucs. The Falcons, though, they were falling apart.
Matty Ice was running for his life behind that line, and the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed, but Jones refused to quit.
Top-ranked defense, he set a new career high with 189 yards, bullying Patrick Peterson and making one of the league's best corners look helpless. And
just when you thought he peaked, boom, Week 14, Lambeau Field, Monday night. Freezing cold, the whole country watching. Julio went into God mode. Short routes, deep shots, crossers in traffic,
11 catches for 259 yards against a playoff-bound Packers team that threw everything at him.
He wrapped up the year with 104 receptions and 1,593 yards, taking the NFC crown and landing top 3 in the league.
Officially answered the question everyone was afraid to ask, even if the Falcons finished 6-10. So, that summer, the Falcons locked him in.
With $47 million guaranteed, the message was loud and clear. This wasn't Matt Ryan's team anymore. This was the house of Julio.
And under new head coach Dan Quinn and offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan, they designed an offense that did exactly that. By midseason,
halfway through the season, he's already got 5 games, topping 135 yards. He torches Jacksonville, then Week 16 hits against the undefeated 14-0 Panthers.
78 yards, including a 70-yard touchdown, where he mossed Luke Kuechly and 2 other defenders. By the end of the year, the numbers didn't even look real.
136 catches, tying Antonio Brown for the crown, and 1,871 yards, second most in history, breathing down Calvin Johnson's neck.
Johnson's legendary record, and 116.9 yards per game, one of the highest averages the league has ever seen. He even became the first wide receiver in
He even became the first wideout in the Super Bowl era to lead the league in total scrimmage yards. That's running back territory, folks.
It's the playoffs, finishing just 8-8.
Just a
and
mediocre
Julio
8-8
was
record.
tired of
Julio
it.
was
So,
fed up.
in 2016, he
was his
became a
scorched earth
man
tour,
on a
but he had
mission.
no clue
But little did he
tragedy was
know,
waiting
he was
at the
about to
finish line.
face
Week 4 brought a rematch with Carolina, the same squad that went 15-1 and bullied their way to the big game the year before. Well,
the same defense that had bullied their way to a Super Bowl. But this time, they were the ones getting bullied. Julio had 12 catches for a touchdown.
He joined the elite club as only the 6th baller in history to ever hit that number. Even
83 receptions for 1,409 yards and 6 touchdowns, as Atlanta finally found themselves back in the playoffs. In the divisional round against Seattle, Julio's
divisional round, he smoked Seattle. But the NFC Championship against the Pack, legendary stuff. 9 catches, 180 yards, 2 trips to the end zone.
performances of the decade, with 9 catches, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And on football's biggest stage against the New England Patriots, Julio Jones.
Whenever Ryan needed a spark, he looked for number 11, and Jones cashed in every single time.
Might be one of the most spectacular catches in Super Bowl history. That catch should have been the moment that had sealed Atlanta and Julio's first.
Instead, a sack, a holding flag. They got pushed out of field goal range, and we all watched the most infamous choke job in sports unfold.
Lapses in sports history. New England stormed back from 28-3, and Julio's masterpiece was left buried under the rubble of heartbreak. Following such a
After a gut punch like that, the Falcons walked into 2017 looking shaky. Could they bounce back, or were they broken? Standing tall
right in the middle of that storm stood Julio Jones, still the focal point of every defensive coordinator's nightmares,
still the freak breaking ankles and game plans. But weirdly, he started the season pretty quiet.
For his first touchdown until week 7. Then came week 12 against Tampa Bay, where Jones had 12 catches, 253 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He ripped
a 51-yarder on a basic crosser. And just to rub it in, he even caught a touchdown pass from fellow receiver Mohamed Sanu.
That performance made him the first player in NFL history with 3 games of catching 250-plus receiving yards. By year's end, Julio.
By the finish line, typical Julio. Elite numbers with 88 grabs and 1,444 yards, but somehow only 3 touchdowns.
Unstoppable force in football, and somehow still underused when it mattered most. But when the playoffs hit, Julio reminded everyone why he was built.
Wild card round against the Rams, he sliced up that L.A. secondary for 94 yards and a score.
Offensive slugfest that came down to one final play. 4th down and goal with about a minute left. The entire season resting on one throw. Everyone in the
Every soul in the stadium knew exactly where that rock was going. Julio skied for it, got his mitts on the leather, but it slipped right through. Heartbreak City. He hit the turf just inches from being the hero. His peers
Julio finished as the number 4 player in the NFL's top 100, voted by his peers. But for fans, that year captured everything about him.
An absolute force of nature, yet somehow hexed by the tiniest margins. Whenever that man strapped on a helmet, you were basically watching a real-life superhero operate. And yet, sometimes even superpowers aren't enough. Julio came out swinging in 2018, snagging 18 balls for 169 yards against the champs, the Eagles. That performance shattered the franchise record with his 40th career 100-yard game, passing Roddy White. Couple weeks later, he drops 173 yards on Cincinnati, then another 144 on Tampa Bay. Just video game numbers.
Against Cincinnati, then 144 more against Tampa. However, by the midway point of the season, Julio's scoring drop had become impossible to ignore.
We're talking 12 straight regular season games, stretching back to the previous year, with 0 touchdowns. Then came week 9 in D.C.
Julio caught a screen pass, hit the Jets, stiff-armed a defender, and powered 35 yards downfield into the end zone. The drought was over.
The curse was broken, and he went absolutely nuclear after that. Over the final 8 games, the man found the paint 8 times.
Fastest player in NFL history to reach 10,000 career receiving yards, doing it in just 104 games. But while Julio soared, the
Dirty Birds
Falcons
were
crashed.
nosediving. The defense got decimated by injuries, the O-line crumbled, and Atlanta stumbled their way to a 7-9 finish.
Begin to fade.
Though at 30 years old,
Julio
when
looked
most
like
wideouts
he
start
was
shopping
just
for retirement
hitting his
homes,
prime.
Julio looked like he was just warming up.
Just a day before the 2019 season kicked off, the Falcons gave Jones
$66 million,
a 3-year,
$66 million biggest guaranteed pile of cash ever for a receiver at the time. And the second the whistle blew, he showed everybody exactly why he was worth every penny.
Everyone knew why. In Week 2 against the Eagles, he passed Roddy White again, this time for the title of Atlanta's all-time leader in.
Next week, he lights up the Colts for 128 yards and a score. By Week 4, he's smashing another record fastest player ever to hit 11,000 yards.
Fastest player in NFL history to do it. Even when the Falcons fell apart, starting 1-7 and watching Dan Quinn's job hang in the balance, Julio was a.
He put up 152 yards on Seattle. Then he torched the Niners for 134 and 2 scores, including a wild game winner with mere seconds on the clock. He wrapped up the year with
finished the season with 99 catches, 1,394 yards, and 6 touchdowns. His sixth straight 1,300-yard season, a streak no receiver in NFL.
But again, the Falcons were watching the playoffs from the couch. Another year of Julio's brilliance wasted on a roster full of holes.
Cover up the cracks around him. But by 2020, Julio started to feel the cracks himself, because a nagging hamstring injury started creeping up. He'd miss a game.
He'd sit out a game, return, and somehow still explode for 137 yards and 2 scores in a random Week 6 matchup against the Vikings.
Even on rewriting the Falcons' record books. In a Monday night game against Green Bay, he passed Roddy White to become the franchise's all-time leader.
But by the time the season wrapped, he'd only suited up for 9 games, finishing with 51 grabs, 771 yards, and 3 scores. Julio had been the face of the franchise for a decade.
When the Falcons season finally ended in a 4-12 disaster,
the vibes shifted.
Everything changed.
Behind the scenes,
drama was tension.
Julio wanted out. He wanted a fresh start, a real contender, somewhere he could chase that elusive ring before his clock ran out.
Shannon Sharp dialed Julio's number during Undisputed. The cameras were rolling. Millions were watching. And when Julio answered, he had no idea he would.
Shannon goes, "Man, look, you want to go to the Cowboys, Julio, or you want to stay in Atlanta?" Julio doesn't miss a beat. "Oh man, no, I'm out of there."
He's out.
Shannon turns to the camera. He's out.
Long
He's out of there. Soon enough, it
became
was a done
official.
deal. Atlanta shipped Julio and a 6th rounder to the Tennessee Titans for a 2nd and 4th round pick. This paired him up with Jay Brown, a dude who literally grew up idolizing Jones.
A man who idolized Jones growing up. Not every day you get to play with the person that inspired you to play the game. Grateful, AJ said. The best wide.
He called Julio the best to ever do it. Throw in Derrick Henry, the most unstoppable tank in football, and this squad looked like a cheat code on paper. Keyword
emphasis on paper, because Julio's debut against the Cardinals was rough. He looked out of sync and drew a costly penalty that led Mike Vrabel to.
Vrabel didn't mince words. That's absolutely nothing that we coach or teach. So that would fall into the category of doing dumb stuff that hurts the team. A week later,
Julio exploded for 128 yards in the first half against the Seahawks, but it never stuck.
He had this bizarre catch against Buffalo, where the ball bounced off a defender's helmet right into his hands, one of the few magic tricks he pulled all year. Other than that,
the hamstring that had haunted him for years came back. He was in and out of the lineup, placed on injured reserve, and returned in December, but
he just wasn't the same guy. He finished with a measly 31 catches, 434 yards, and 1 lonely touchdown. For a legend who used to sleepwalk into 1,400-yard seasons, it was a brutal reality check. Tennessee still
was a harsh dose of reality. Tennessee still earned the AFC's #1 seed, and Julio still showed some fight in the playoffs with 6 catches.
But the Titans got bounced 19-6. A few weeks later, Tennessee cut the cord completely.
Looking for a new team, he was searching for another shot at the one thing that had always slipped through his fingers, a Super Bowl ring.
Breaking news hit. Julio Jones headed back to the NFC South, but not to Atlanta. He was joining Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, confirmed by Jonathan Jones.
It's a one-year deal for the 7-time Pro Bowler who is now 33 years old.
Julio catching passes from the greatest.
2 legends chasing one last sunset. It was the kind of script Hollywood loves, and right out of the gate, it looked like it might actually happen.
Like the dream might come true. In Week 1 against Dallas, Julio turned back the clock, hauling in a 48-yard bomb. But not long after, a partially torn PCL.
When he finally made his comeback, he wasn't exactly the alien we used to know, but he still found a way to write his name in the history books by snagging the first ever touchdown on German soil.
Scoring the first ever touchdown in an NFL game played in Germany, a 31-yard strike from Brady against the Seahawks. Julio finished the regular season with 2.
He wrapped up that season with 299 yards and a couple of scores across 10 games. And even when they faced the Cowboys in the playoffs, he wasn't going down without a fight, leading the team with 74 yards and a touchdown.
Sadly, the Bucs refusing to go quietly. But the Buccaneers fell 31-14. Brady retired for good, and Julio's chapter in Tampa quietly closed.
Fast forward to 2023, and he joined the Eagles. He wasn't the main character anymore, but the young bloods on defense still looked at him like a total legend. They knew exactly
They remembered the man who used to dominate their heroes.
And in Week 17,
Julio gave fans one last glimpse of that greatness, catching 2 touchdowns.
At that point, it wasn't about stats. It was about going out with some dignity. But even with a resume that stacked, Julio walked away without that elusive Super Bowl ring on his finger.
Tired without a Super Bowl ring.
How scary
so that
was
begs
Julio
the question,
really?
How good
Because
was
when you
Julio
look back
Jones?
At the 2010s,
Actually,
that
when you
era
look
was
back at the
absolutely
2010s, you
loaded with wide
realize
receiver
just how
talent. You had Antonio Brown shattering records in Pittsburgh and DeAndre Hopkins in Houston making catches that legally shouldn't be possible.
Odell Beckham Jr. turned sideline grabs into viral moments, and A.J. Green was silently dominating in Cincinnati. But Julio Jones wasn't part of it.
He was the gold standard everyone else was chasing. Between 2014 and 2019, the man averaged a staggering 103.
And had 5 seasons with at least 1,400 yards, tying Jerry Rice for the most in NFL history. Julio's career average of 82.5 receiving yards per game.
His career average of 82.5 yards per game is still one of the wildest stats ever, and he sprinted to 10,000 yards faster than anyone else, hitting that mark in only 104 games.
Milestone in just 104 games. He broke every major receiving record in Falcons history, and yet, for all his accolades, Julio never needed theatrics.
We aren't just talking about the best of his time. We are talking about one of the most unstoppable forces the league has ever witnessed, and he didn't need a loud personality to do it.
He did it through production, precision, and physicality, unlike any other. If you enjoyed this video, stick with Blitz, subscribe, and
smash that subscribe button and check out more of our videos right over here.